Today in our 2010 Honda Odyssey, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode wiring kit with the 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo Coil. Part number is RM-15267. What this is going to allow us to do is use two sources of signal to control the one light. So when we're operating our vehicle as normal, we're going to have the input from our vehicle light. As we're flat towing our vehicle and we want our motorhome signal, we'll be able to use the signal from our motorhome light. Now this diode is going to prevent any kind of backfeeding, so our motorhome won't make a loop and feed into our car, and vice versa. The car is not going to feed into the motorhome. So it isolates those systems, but still is going to make it a very nice way for us to get the lighting we need here at the back of the vehicle. Here you see our plug mounted on the front of the vehicle. This is where we're going to plug in the Flexo Coil from the motorhome. Going to bring it in here. You see the door, it's spring loaded here with the stainless steel spring. There's a little keeper there that's going to keep our Flexo Coil in place. Hold it in there nicely. This is going to allow us to do the ground wire, the running lights, the left and right turn signal, brake lights of course, and it's going to leave you with 2 extra pins. So if you're trying to do a monitor light up inside of your RV, or in this case we've used the center pin for a charge line, it's going to give you a few extra options. And you'll see the raised rib here, it's going to fit into the groove around there, so when not in use, it's going to help keep out any of that moisture or anything like that. Now our installation for the wiring kit, it's going to begin well before we have the fascia back on the car. Once the base plate's installed, now's the time to get our wires ran up and heading the right direction to get back to the rear of the car. We're going to be using a universal long bracket. Part number is 18136 to do this. Now to this bracket, we're going to be adding a few different components. The wiring plug we're going to have up the bottom of it there. Then on the top, we're going to use this for our airline fitting and for our breakaway switch for the braking system. So it's going to help us out quite a bit. I just want to mark this off here at a point that's about at the middle of my holes. That should allow for enough room for clearance underneath that license plate so we can get in there and do what we need to do. Now we'll measure up to that line, make another mark here, and then we'll just use a vise to bend that over. All right, we've got our bracket made up. Hit it with some spray paint just to make sure we don't have any rusting. We're going to get that centered on the center point of our base plate we just measured from arm to arm there. We're going to bring our clamp around. If you start with this screw up, you can get it just to slide in there and take a lot of that slack out. Then you tip that down and that'll hold it in position for you. You need a 5/16 bit driver or socket and start snugging that on down. See, that's going to give us a very sturdy attachment point, and we'll just trim this excess off. Now to get our wiring up to the front, kind of in this area, which is just behind the main engine compartment, this is your subframe. I'm going to go up that way with the brake lines. And to do this, you can see we connected our wire to a piece of airline tubing. You could also use like a coat hanger or a stiff piece of wire. That's just going to help you get it up there where you need it so you can work with it. Now we want to go just over the frame rail there. We're going to come out over underneath the air box. And you just want to be sure when you're doing this that you're not going to be in any pinch point. You want to avoid any sharp edges or anything else that might cause damage to the wire. Then once we have that out up here, just tuck it down and we can zip tie that off to the back of the base plate. We'll leave plenty of extra so we can make our connections without any problem. But you do want to get it zip tied off anywhere you can. That way you give it support and keep it from moving around. Now in order for our wiring to work with the attachments we need to put up here for our braking system, you'll see I've drilled holes just behind the original holes, and we're going to use those for our attachment points here. We can use the provided hardware, and you're just going to bring that down through and then thread on that locking nut on the back side there. Bring it up, just get that tightened down. Now we've got our 4 wires here that we've run to the front of the vehicle. You can see the fascia's back on at this point. We've also ran a charge wire down here. That is not going to be part of the kit, but a charge line is a good idea on this application. This will take power from the front of the vehicle, run it up to our battery, and keep it charged. There's been some symptoms with the Odyssey in a flat toe setup that it loses its battery charge. This is just a good way to combat that. Part number is RM156-25. Just going to tape these together for a second, and we'll get the ends of these stripped off. The nice thing about using the 7 to 6 wire is that it does give you 2 extra connection points for anything you might want to do on the vehicle, like that charge line. If you're using just a 4-round plug on the front, you wouldn't be able to have that charge line unless you ran it separately. Once we've got them all stripped, we're just going to twist the end there, keep our wires from fraying. Now we'll group those together. We're going to take that rubber boot off the back of our wiring and get that slid up on there. Then you'll see here on the back of our plug, there's 6-round plug there. We're going to have 6 different areas to connect a wire. Now this would be the top of the plug if you're looking at the front. That's going to be our trailer marker lights, then our ground, our left turn, our right turn here. We're going to use the center one for that charge line. We'll just back out these small Phillips screws. Get our wire placed down in there, and then with a small Phillips screwdriver, just tighten that down to get a good connection. We'll move on to our trailer marker. It's the brown wire from our harness there. Next one we have is GD. That'll be our ground. That's our white wire. LT's next. That's left turn, which is our yellow wire. And then the last one in order there is right turn. That's our green wire. The other one is not going to be used. Now I'm going to bring my boot down. I'm going to place that over the back side, just like that. And I'm also going to take a little piece of the wire loom that came with the kit. We'll use that to go around our wire. We'll trim that off and throw a zip tie around it to hold it in place. Now I'm going to leave a little gap there, because once I test this out and I confirm that it works, I'm going to shoot some black silicone sealant inside of that boot, just so we don't have any moisture that gets in there and causes corrosion on the back side of our plug. Once we've tested it and filled it with silicone, then we'll just use our provided hardware. We'll get it secured right to our bracket there. Now here on the back side, we're going to continue running towards the rear of the vehicle. You're going to follow along with the brake lines for the most part. Those typically are run in safe areas. Now as you do run backwards, we need to really avoid any of the sharp edges, any pinch points, or any other heat sources or anything like that that might actually cause our wire damage. Now, as we move along here, I'm going to take any chance I can to get a zip tie around my wire and get it attached up somewhere nice and secure. That'll just prevent any issues with it ever coming down below the vehicle. Now we can take our white wire at this point, and really we can do it anywhere along the run here, but we're going to separate it off and we're going to ground it out to the chassis of the vehicle. There's a stud located right here. It's holding our parking brake cable we're going to use. So we'll trim off our wire to give us about what we'll need to make it there. We're going to hang on to the excess we cut off. We might be able to use that in our install a little bit later. So we'll grab a 12mm socket. We can get our bolt backed out here. You see our provided ring terminal. It's going to fit that bolt just about perfectly. We'll just add that to our white wire. Let's get that that stripped back. Get that in place on our wire and get it crimped down nice and securely. And place it on that stud and tighten it down. Alright, that'll be an excellent ground source there. Now we'll continue running the rest of our wire towards the rear. Now we'll go right up over the fuel tank here using those straps to hold it up in place. Keep adding on our zip ties. And once we get back here to where the tires are, we're going to separate our green wire and take that over to the passenger side. With our green wire separated, we'll take our yellow and brown wire. We're going to bring that right over here in this area where we'll hope to pull it up in there to our taillights. Just want to be sure to keep it up and away from the exhaust. It's going to be pretty close here, but try to keep it as high as possible. And now it's time to take out the taillight housings here in the rear. You'll see a couple of caps that are covering up a Phillips head screw in there. So we'll pull those caps out, set those aside, and also remove those screws. Now it can be a bit tricky, but you'll want to pull out and rearward to separate a couple of pressure clips that are here in the front of the light. See right here we've got a little keeper for our wiring. We're going to pull that out there. Now we're going to be using the upper bulb in the housing to control our taillights, our blinkers, and our brake signals. So let's take the electrical tape off of the wires that we've got here. Be real careful here. You don't want to cut into the wires themselves. You just want to get that tape off. Alright, now you can see here we've got 3 wires running into the back. One of these will be the brake signal, one of them is going to be a ground, the other one's going to be the running light signal. Now we'll just use a test light to determine which of those are which. Now with our test light here, you just want to ground out your ground clamp. And we'll use our probe. We'll start by having them turn on the running lights. So our running lights are on. We should get a signal coming through one of our wires. Alright, now turn those off please. And back on. So our red wire, it's going to be for the running light circuit. Now if you will please hit the brakes. Now we'll test out the other 2 wires for the brake signal. And off and back on. Alright, so red for running lights and white for brakes on this side. We'll test the other side and make sure it's the same, then we can start getting our diodes in place. Now right through the gap here that's between the body and this rear bumper fascia structure, there's going to be a gap that's going to allow us to get out and underneath the vehicle. So just like we used before, a thick piece of wire, airline tubing if you've got some laying around, we'll just run that down through, we'll be able to connect our wire and pull it up here so we can work with it. Alright, well we've got these up here, let's get these separated. Now we'll bring our wires up here, we're going to leave plenty of excess here, that way we'll have room for it to move around. And we can get these trimmed back. Now just like with our white wire, we're going to hang on to our excess here in case we need it. We'll strip both of those back. We're also going to be cutting our red wire and our white wire here and stripping those back. we want to add on one of the blue female spade connectors. This is just going to slide on that stripped end, and then we're going to crimp these down. And we're also going to be adding a blue to the end of our yellow wire that's going to act as our turn signal in our brake. Now we're going to take that additional length of white wire that we cut off our ground, and we're going to use that. I don't think the length of brown wire we had is going to be long enough for this job, but essentially this will act like a jumper wire. So we've got the running light signal coming from our motor home here. We're going to tie these together and then use the white wire to get that same signal over to our passenger side. And here we're going to crimp on one of the yellow spade connectors because that'll accommodate both of the wires. Now I'm going to be using this area right in here to mount my diodes, so we're going to be covering that up. We won't be reusing that, it's not a big deal. But you do want to clean that surface off with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. That way we give our diodes a really good chance to stick on there and stay. Alright, now let's start with our diode for our blinker and brake signal. That's our yellow wire. So we'll take the input from the vehicle. It's going to go in one side of our diode there. We're going to take the input from our motor home. It goes in the other end side. And then the white wire that runs out to the light, we'll plug it in on the output here. You'll see some double stick tape on the back there. We'll just peel that covering off, get it in the location where we want it, and get it stuck into place there. We're also going to clean off the face of our diode there a little bit because we're going to be stacking these one on top of the other. It looks like there's enough room for them both to fit. Just like that. That'll plug into the back of our light housing, and so will that down at the blinker. Then we've got our white wire here. Just going to feed this down the direction our yellow and brown wire came up, and we should be able to grab that underneath and pull it on down. Now at this point, I like to anchor these wires out. You can see we've got that little opening there. It's going to give us a great chance to do that. That's just going to prevent any of this little bit of excess we have in case we ever need to make any changes from hanging down below the vehicle. I'll just plug our two pigtails back in there, get it lined up and slid into position. And just re-secure that with our two screws, and we can put those covers back on. And we'll go to the passenger side, and we're going to repeat the same process there, only our yellow wire will become green. Our brown wire, of course, is going to be white, and we're not going to have to use that jumper wire. Now for our jumper wire here, remember this is our extension of our brown wire. We'll just run it across the rear fascia here. Typically there's going to be a fastener here in the middle, but this one has already been removed, it looks like. So we can get our hand in there. Most likely yours will still be in location, so you can remove that to give you a little bit of access. Now we can join the two of those together. Just like the other side, we'll tape them on and pull them up there so we can work with them. And we can get our inputs put in. We're working with the red wire, so that's going to be our running lights. That's going to be our white wire that we spliced into our brown wire, you remember, on that other side. Already got our surface prep there, so we'll just stick this right down in there in place. And we're going to be using our green wire for our turn signal this time. Alright, now let's test all of our connections. We're going to start by using a trailer tester. You could also simply just plug into the back of your motorhome, and we'll turn on our tail lights. With those working, we'll check our left blinker signal. And our left brake signal. Now we can do the right blinker signal. And our right brake signal. Alright, with that working properly, let's check and make sure that our in-vehicle functions are all still working. We'll test our running lights, left blinker, right blinker, and brakes. Now we'll check to see if we need a brake light relay. To test that, we'll operate the blinker from our motorhome or our trailer tester, and with the vehicle in tow mode, we'll have someone inside step on the brakes. You'll notice that that has quit flashing. That means that the car's signal is overriding the motorhome signal. We'll use a brake light relay, part number RM-88400, to stop the brake signal in our towed vehicle when it's being pulled behind our motorhome. Now with everything working properly, I'm going to take my black sealant here like we said and just fill in the back side of our plug. Alright, now that we've got that filled up, we can attach our plug to our bracket. And that'll complete our installation of the Roadmaster Diode wiring kit with the 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo Coil. Part number is RM-15267 on our 2010 Honda Odyssey.